Hello and welcome to episode 200 of Herpetological Highlights, the podcast all about reptile and amphibian science. And yeah, 200 episodes, Ben. We did it.
200.
Wow, success. And we have decided to do something a little bit special for this 200th episode. We're excited to have made it to the double century. Impressive in podcast terms, I would say. Great to be here, 200 episodes. We're going to talk about snakes a little bit later, but we decided for this 200th installment, we'll do something a little bit special. In the past, we've done quizzes and people have enjoyed them. They've gone down well, like to test each other's knowledge. It's also kind of, I think, a little bit humbling for us to be reminded of how little we actually know when we don't have notes in front of us.
I think this will be a wonderfully humbling experience, mainly because we've read a decent number of papers over 200 episodes, remembering which ones have been read and remember whatever findings from said papers and just general information about a podcast. It's surprisingly difficult, to be honest, because I feel like I'm retaining this information, but then I have a feeling that that's not really the case.
The way I retain information is, you can imagine, I don't know, there are like all these kind of snippets, these ideas, these like vestiges of knowledge left over. And if you are sort of triggered or if your brain is tickled in the right way, you might remember something.
Somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, people talk to me about things we've talked about on the podcast. And first of all, I feel a bit scared because I'm like, oh God, I'm not going to remember this. But then, you know, the right little sort of nugget of information triggers something and you're like, oh yeah, that was that salamander. Oh yeah, wasn't there that thing? And like, it's a little bit of a sort of spiral down and you remember maybe. So let's see. I mean, maybe we can trigger some memories in each other here. Maybe not. Who's going to go first? I wish I had like a little quiz sort of jingle here, but I haven't got anything prepared. So we'll just fly into it. I mean, I guess I could do a little bit of maybe like a, is it that kind of a thing? It's a bit too aggressive, maybe.
It's no Thunderdome, but I mean, yeah, it'll do.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe, shall I go first? I'll read you a question and you can see if you get it. And then I'll keep a score of how many you get right. You keep a score of how many I get right. And at the end, to the victor go the as yet undetermined spoils.
And we have no idea whether we have gauged the difficulty of these questions correctly.
No. Let's see. Okay, well, I think I'll start you off, Ben. I'll start you off. I think I've started you off with like a relatively easy one. I didn't want to be too mean. So let's go first. Question 1, Ben. Which animals did Charles Darwin describe as imps of darkness?
You know what? I was having Aubrey help me with the questions, and that was one of the ones he suggested. I said, no, that's too easy. We can't have that.
Oh, really? You're too kind.
Because it's marine iguanas, right?
Excellent. Yes, marine iguanas.
All the way from the Galapagos.
From the Galapagos. So there you go. That's an easy point. An easy point. And to know that you have been more harsh than that, I think is cruel and unfair. And I'm already on the back foot, but you go.
Okay. If you were to go to Costa Rica, to catch some Anolis aquaticus, what colour clothing would offer you an advantage?
Oh, no.
Now, that's cruel. So I do have a multiple choice here.
Yeah.
You can choose between orange, green, or blue. And this was a paper by Fondren, Swierk and Putman in 2020.
I remember it well because it was the one where they were going around. Was it to do with choosing their mates? I'm going to say orange.
Yes, orange.
Yes, it was orange.
The whole suggestion was that picking a colour that's closer to the dewlap coloration that the lizards use for mating signalling was beneficial. It kept them bolder and therefore easier to capture.
It's also my joint favourite colour. So...
well, there we go.
I guess me and those little lizards have got something more in common than we thought. Excellent. So the dewlap of the aquatic anole. Good question. They like orange. Okay, so it's one each, Ben. One each. All right. Question 2 from me. Which species of snake have we discussed in relation to the challenges of translocation to new wetland areas? Snakes being translocated to new wetlands. Which species? Wasn't that long ago. We're talking in the last few months.
Oh, no. Oh, this feels like one I should know too. Oh, dear.
They like it wet.
I don't think it was Natrix. Maybe a Nerodia. Nerodia with the funny eyes.
Nerodia with the funny eyes. No. You're in the right group of snakes, but no, it was in fact the giant garter snake.
Oh.
Thamnophis gigas. Yeah, so similar.
Yes.
Natricines, but different. So that's a no.
Kind of quite different.
Yeah, they are quite different. Yeah, I think the giant garter snake's a little bit less silly looking and quizzical than Nerodia, those other water snakes.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so that's one right, one wrong.
Okay. We covered a paper describing elongated tortoises eating an unusual prey item. And I'm going to ask you what that prey item was. Again, multiple choice, because this is a bit out of the blue.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Was it a snake, a lizard, another tortoise, or some chips?
A snake, a lizard, another tortoise, or some chips. The only thing I can remember about those blue and elongate tortoises, obviously, you guys had the spatial paper about them, which I vaguely recall because I looked at the figures. And I remember there was one that got stuck upside down in a hole that Matt wrote a paper about ages ago.
Well, it sort of put its face into it, like got stuck in like a puddle and drowned itself. Yeah.
Yeah, it got stuck in a puddle.
Or at least that was what was inferred from a turtle stuck face down into a like sort of rocky pool.
But tortoises will scavenge, so it's just okay. I don't think it was eating chips because I remember that. So I think it's either, I don't think it'd be able to eat another tortoise very easily because they're covered in a shell. So I'm going to go for it was eating a snake.
Yes. It was a buff striped keelback.
Oh, mate.
It was a paper that we called, it wasn't our elongated tortoises. It was tortoises in the pool that we were bringing up in relation to, I think we had a sort of like tortoise chat episode at some point, and that was one of the ones that came up as like a unusual finding.
You were kind by giving me the multiple choice there. I wouldn't have remembered otherwise, and I didn't really remember. That was partially a guess. Okay, so question 3 for me. This one's maybe a little bit trickier. Okay, so what was the species epithet given to the species of Bürgés chameleon from Madagascar that may be the world's smallest reptile? Brachysia.
See, this is another one that I was thinking of doing the smallest reptile stuff.
Really?
Oh my gosh, Brachysia.
It sounds like small.
It sounds like small. Nana. Brachysia nana.
Yes! Yes! Amazing. All right, good work.
Thank you for the generous clue.
Well, you know, I think you still did well to remember that. It's a scientific name. Okay. Well done. Okay, so you're 2 out of 3. And what am I? Am I 2 for 2? I went first.
You're 2 for 2, yeah, despite me not marking down the second one, yeah.
Okay. I'll remember because I'm ridiculously competitive.
Over the course of 200 episodes, how many times have we used the term dragon in the title?
Oh, okay. I have to get it bang on.
Bang on's a pretty big ask. I was going to say one either side, but that's almost too generous.
One either side seems fair. One either side.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's too generous. Okay. Well, what have we had?
We'll go one either side.
We've had sleeping dragons. We've had bearded dragons' dodgy dinners. We've had something about, did the one the other day where we were talking about bearded dragons being able to withstand venomous bites? I can't remember if that had dragon in the title. I'm going to say 5 times.
6 times.
Oh! So what did we decide? Do I get that or not?
Yeah, we're counting. I mean, closest without going over, right?
Okay, nice. Yeah.
6 times. 6 times out of 200 that we've used. I'm both shocked that it's that high and impressed that we haven't been drawn into using it more.
Yeah, we think we lean on dragon a little bit more than that. But yeah, there we go. We had I guess we had the ones about the Komodos as well. We had one that was just called Komodo dragons, didn't we? I can't remember.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Good question. Okay, so question 4. Mamouche is the common name given to which Asian pit viper species? Now, I'm feeling like maybe it would be fairer to give you options because it's quite a hard one.
So Mamouche, they're the viper that lives in Japan.
Okay, I'm not giving you any help because you already know where you're going with this.
Yeah. Sorry, what am I after?
What's the common name? Okay, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4 other common names. Give me any one of them.
Oh, my days. But like Mamouche's their common name.
Mamouche is a common name, but what's the other common name that we would sort of...
The English common name, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the English common name. And don't overthink it would be what I would say.
And you said it was how many words?
I didn't say it was any number of words.
You stopped yourself.
Yeah, and I don't want to say how many words it is because it's like, it could be a little bit confusing.
Well, I'm assuming, yeah, because I feel like pit viper. It is a pit viper. I'm pretty...
That's what I mean, yeah, it's pit viper. It's
positive that could be hyphenated.
Yeah, I think of it as one word now, but you often see it as 2 words still.
And it's not just...
It's something pit viper though, you're on, yeah.
Is it not just Japanese pit viper?
It is, that's correct, Ben.
I was trying to think of another adjective because I'm like, oh, well, there might be a second one. There's usually a second one where there's one.
I think if I'd had a question about mamouches, I would have just panicked and not remembered. So well done. You're 3 out of 4 so far.
Okay, your 4th one. So the Aegean wall lizard was at Podarcis hardi is a polymorphic lizard, and it comes in white, yellow, and orange. But which of those morphs is the least aggressive and biggest loser?
Now, I remember this paper.
It's a classic Thunderdome paper.
Yeah.
They had the white morphs versus the yellow morphs versus the orange morphs versus... They had them all competing against each other, and there was this wonderful diagram of the arrows pointing to all the different morphs, whether they would show off different aggressive behaviours and win bouts or not.
Oh, I can't remember properly. I do remember there was something. I feel like maybe it was the yellow ones were a bit pathetic.
No, it wasn't. It was weirdly the orange ones.
Oh, it was the orange ones. Okay, that would have been my last guess. So yeah, I got that one wrong fair and square. Orange ones are the most pathetic. All right, so we're level pegging then after 4 questions each because we're each on 3 out of 4. That was a good question, that. Okay, and I feel like I finished on a really easy one, which I'm kind of like somewhat regretting now, but I've made my bed. So I just feel like you're going to get this in a second. All right, so episode 175, we were talking about turtles moving in herds. They were Central American river turtles, Dermatemis mauii. The paper had a fun name. They really do move in herds. But when they were surveying these turtles, which kind of transmitter were they attaching to them to allow them to track them?
For turtles?
Yeah. What kind of transmitter were attached in order for them to seek them out? I remember it because we explicitly mentioned it on the podcast. They're twiddles.
I don't think it would have been radio because of water. I don't think it would be GPS because of expense. I think it was one of the ones that they go through various gates and it ticks off when they go through a gate or not within a certain like proximity. So like one of those audio related ones, which I forget the name of. Oh my days. Like the RFID tag equivalents.
Well, like a pit tag.
Basically like a pit tag, yeah, where they go through... Because, right, if they're a river species, you'd set up gates along the river and then sort of ID how far up and down the river they've gone, whether they go through a gate or not.
Yep.
Like fish tracking.
So fish tracking with pit tags going through gates. I'm afraid, Ben, that is incorrect. They were actually sonic transmitters, so acoustic.
God damn it.
Yep. And so then they have a hydrophone.
See, that's what I was on the right path there.
They had a little canoe and they had a hydrophone. They were dropping it down. Ding, ding, ding. There's the turtle.
I'm listening under the water for them. Yeah, well, I should have.
It was close. Your reasoning for not radio was good. Your reasoning for not GPS was good. You just went down the wrong fork of the path. So final score, 3 out of 5.
All right. Well, I'm ending with an aquatic, watery-based one too. The flat-tailed house gecko, Hemidactylus platyurus, can run on water. At their average water running speed, approximately how long would it take for them to run the entire length of an Olympic-sized swimming pool? An Olympic-sized swimming pool is 50 meters long.
Okay, so we're talking about a little house gecko type.
Yeah, Hemidactylus platyurus. Now, this is me inferring the time based on their average speed provided in the paper.
Right, so...
Which actually I've forgotten to grab the citation for, so...
I have to preface this by saying I had no idea they could run on water.
Well, I mean, we covered it was a whole paper.
Don't remember it. Okay, so...
I do have multiple choice if you would like multiple choice.
No, I think this is for the potential win here, so I should probably just work it out. All right, so how fast does a gecko go when it's walking? I mean, I guess like a meter a second, maybe? That's fast. Maybe it's 2 meters? Half a meter a second, was it? Just trying to imagine a gecko running on the wall here. I reckon they can go a meter a second. And so I think their speed along on water would have to be more or less the same. I reckon a bit faster though. So maybe they'd cover a 50-meter Olympic swimming pool in 40 seconds.
40 seconds is what you're going for. That's not a bad guess. So my options I was going to provide you was 20 seconds, 1 minute, 20 seconds, 2 minute, 20 seconds, and 4 minutes, 20 seconds.
Okay, then 1 minute 20.
Which is bang on. That's so based on their sort of average running speed, it would take them about 82 seconds to get across run the length of that Olympic. This is sort of foregoing some acceleration time and some de-acceleration time at the end.
I was overestimating their speed though a little bit.
No, you didn't overestimate their speed by much because their maximum speed was 90 centimeters a second.
Oh wow, okay, cool. So
like top end, you were pretty close, but average less so.
And so am I having a point for that or no?
I think so, because I wasn't expecting you to be, it's 82.4 seconds. I think 40 seconds, it's the closest to my multiple choice. So I think so.
All right, so I'm technically the winner then, Ben. 4 against 3.
Well earned.
Thank you. Well, good game. You're magnanimous in victory. That was fun. And actually, we remembered a lot more than I thought we would. It's actually kind of good sign. I mean, the questions weren't that hard. I'd be interested to know if people listening, how much they remembered. If anyone got 10 out of 10, tell us. But we definitely won't believe you. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, there we go. Episode 200, little quiz. Should we move on to our paper that we had planned for this episode?
Should we do some proper stuff? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a paper here by Mészáros, Bürgés, Tamás, Gál, Schmera and Hamer, published in 2024. Urban Oasis, abundant dice snake populations along artificial lakeside habitats in urban landscapes, published in Landscape Ecology. So,
it's been a while since we've done an urbanization paper, I feel.
Yeah, especially one that actually has like kind of cool, potentially not sad implications, which is nice.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about dice snakes, Natrix tessellata. Tessellated meaning a pattern of repeated shapes, especially polygons, that fit together closely without gaps. So that's the kind of pattern, this sort of repeated polygon pattern. It sounds really striking. I think that's a bit of an overstep for these snakes. They're not particularly beautiful creatures, I would argue.
Wow.
They do have an interesting sort of pattern, but they kind of fade to slightly plain. But they're kind of weird looking. These dice snakes, they're sort of slightly ugly beasts. Nature's given them the sort of aquatic eyes on top of their head. The eyes are starting to rotate around the top of the head.
Absolutely ripping into them.
Yeah, they look like little freaks. They look a bit quizzical, a little bit daft, I always think.
They do look a bit quizzical because they've got quite googly eyes.
Yeah, and they're chubby little aquatic. They live in the water. Have you ever seen one, Ben? You ever seen a dice snake?
No, I don't think so. No.
I've seen one. I saw one on the beach in Crete when I was on holiday when I was about, 13, 14. Saw one on the beach. It was crawling around in the rocks. Didn't know what it was at the time, just knew it was a snake. And yeah, it was underwater, mooching around. It was in fresh water, but like where the water met the sea. So it was like coming, it's like a little river. Which stands to reason because these things eat fish.
They're all sort of brackish.
Yeah, it might have been a little brackish there. And so we're talking about this species in the context of the expansion of urban areas. So obviously, generally, urbanization has negative effects for wildlife. You lose habitat, it becomes fragmented. They tend to be louder, more dangerous places. Lots of snakes get run over by cars. You end up with sort of asphalt roads, concrete pavements, and these significantly influence the ambient temperature of urban habitats, causing them to be a bit hotter. So we call this urban...
Yeah, your classic heat island effect, yeah.
Urban heat islands, exactly, which can usually it's bad for animals. Occasionally it can be good for reptiles because some of them are thermophilic, heat-loving. But generally reptile abundance, so like the number of individual animals you get is lower in modified habitats that are sort of human-dominated compared to unmodified natural ones. Usually there's about 1/3 lower reptile abundance, so sort of 33% fewer reptiles in modified habitats with lots of humans about. The authors of this paper were interested how urbanization, so this trend towards more urban environments, has affected the abundance, so how many snakes, in 25 different populations in Hungary. So we're in Central Europe here in Hungary, and we're in Lake Balaton in Hungary, which is the largest shallow lake in Central Europe. It's very central in Europe, and it covers a surface.
The largest shallow lake in Central Europe.
Yeah, I know, it's a bit weird.
That's a strange phrase there.
Yes, distinguishing shallow lakes, because the average depth is only 3.14 meters of this lake, Lake Balaton, and it covers nearly 600 square kilometers. And I've actually been here. I went traveling in Hungary with some pals. A couple of times I've actually been to Hungary. Last time was probably about 7-8 years ago. And we went to Lake Balaton. It's very big. It's absolutely massive. It takes ages to drive past.
But not very deep.
Not very deep. It's actually disarmingly shallow. You walk all the way out into the middle of it and it's like, oh, it's actually not very deep. It's weirdly shallow. You do notice that.
Huh.
And because Hungary is a landlocked country, it has no coastline. And so people flock to Lake Balaton, especially in the summer. It's just like, people everywhere. It's like this giant, because it's such a big lake, it might as well be a sea, you know? So it's like people chilling out all along.
Yeah.
Big tourist attraction. And because of that, there's obviously a lot of pressure from people. There's people around. Yeah, the authors of this paper basically wanted to see, does the sort of degree of urbanization affect how many snakes you find? So they picked 25 different places around this massive lake to look for snakes. They visited each location 6 times, and on each visit, they counted how many snakes. And that gave them a sort of abundance for how many snakes were in each area. They could work out roughly how many snakes were in each location. And they wanted to try and see if the sort of numbers were associated with certain characteristics of the local environment.
Yeah, there's an added bit of coolness to how they did it, though, because they've done repeated surveys of the same locations. They can pick out the sort of chance of detecting a snake. So you can separate your chance of finding a snake from the abundance of the snakes themselves, which is it gives you a lot more confidence that the abundance that you're seeing isn't just a product of you being better or worse at finding snakes. They did actually see, so with that detection aspect in mind, they did find that detection was improved on warmer days, wasn't it?
Yes, warmer water.
Warmer water. So you can sort of account for the warmth of the water, and then you know that your abundance estimates are actually the number of snakes around as opposed to just the chance of finding snakes on that given day.
Yeah, exactly. And so they put all that data into some models, didn't they? Sort of statistical models to try and work out what was affecting abundance and while considering hot water. And quite surprisingly, I think you could say, garter snake abundance, so increased abundance, more snakes locally, was associated with urban areas, roads, main roads, and rocks. So all of these things being in close proximity to main roads and roads, rock structures, and urbanized areas all seem to increase the number of snakes which were found in these locations.
Yeah, so what was these sort of rocky areas were sort of constructed unnatural rocky areas, right? To sort of mitigate lake edge erosion, right?
Yeah, they dump out a load of big fake... Well, they're real rocks, but they are artificially placed there as like a flood defense.
Yeah, the construction of them, the placement of them is artificial, not the rocks themselves.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Bunch of polystyrene rocks.
So yeah, they liked all those things. Essentially, all of those things increase the abundance of snakes. So like you say, these artificially constructed rocky, also metal structures. And it's like, okay, well, that's random, isn't it? Like these snakes appear to like urban areas and all these like fake rocky environments. So they try and work out, they try and sort of think about why it might be that they like these structures. And when you think about it a little bit, rocks and artificial structures like that could be useful for the snakes for a number of things. They could take shelter there. They could bask on them. If these are snakes which are in the water hunting for fish, they come out and they can bask on the rocks adjacent to the water, get nice and hot. That's a benefit for snakes.
Yes, they did highlight their love of fish and that there's invasive gobies in the lake. And I do wonder whether there's a nice sort of matchup with where the gobies are and potentially more disturbed human-modified areas. Because that's such a classic. When a species has been introduced to a place, when it's not natively found there, it will end up making better use of these sort of human-modified areas because it can't quite compete with the ones that have always been there in natural areas. I wonder if the gobies are making good use of it as well.
Yeah, and you get this whole thing where like invasive species which are introduced to human areas likely came from human areas, so they're like pre-adapted to it. It's this whole thing.
Right,
It's like a snowball effect. These gobies, I know they're an absolute menace. I work with a bunch of aquatic ecologists and I've watched some presentations about these gobies, and yeah, they're getting about, and they probably are like extremely artificially abundant through being invasive species. And so these snakes are likely, capitalizing on this, which I think is really, really cool. A nice boon of an invasive species potentially for a native species, which you don't always get.
Yes, there's an example in North America too, of something that's another introduced fish, I believe, that's holding up a snake population quite nicely, or at least bolstering it. I forget what it is though.
But yeah, so, these snakes, as well as sheltering and basking in the rocks, they can also lay their eggs in between rocks, and they can also find places to hibernate potentially. So these are all sort of things which might be beneficial. I think crucially, it's one thing to be like, oh, the snakes love urban areas. Well, yeah, fundamentally though, you can't urbanize water. So a lake is always going to be a lake. It's going to be wet. There's not a road in the lake. There's a road adjacent to the lake. You can urbanize it to a point, but you know what I mean? To some extent, water's water. It's like you could pave it, I guess, but then it wouldn't be a lake.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like canals are like your urbanized water, right? Or like harbors are your urbanized water where the substrate's been completely removed, essentially.
Yeah, that is 100% true. But fundamentally, when you're in the water, you're still in the water. And like, although it's like a narrow channel, which has got like crazy sedimentation and weird edges, like if you eat fish and live in the water, you can still do it.
Yes.
So yeah, I feel like...
I do take your point.
I just think like these kind of like generalized... They're fish predators, but a lot of these like snakes which live in water they'll live in canals. Look at grass snakes, very closely related to these guys.
Yeah.
They'll live in water. They'll just live in any old canal. If there's a frog and a fish about, they'll just make do. And so, yeah, these snakes, although they are living in an urbanized environment, they aren't living on the road. They're living adjacent to the road. And it isn't the fact that there's a road that's benefiting them. It's just the fact that, like, it might be there's a bit of thermal benefit from there being a road. And then, adjacent to the road, there's also going to be like other structures which they can use for other stuff.
Yes, it's road as proxy for something that is actually useful to the snake, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like urban areas have these ecological opportunities. It's not simply by virtue of being urban, and like certainly terrestrial species are probably much less likely to benefit than aquatic ones from intense urbanization, I'd say. But it is interesting because they also say that dice snakes in more urban areas are also larger than ones in other areas, which suggests that there are some pretty good ecological opportunities here, allowing them to get fat and happy. There's going to be winners and losers in urbanization. And as it turns out, dice snakes apparently, at least in this big lake in Hungary, Lake Balaton, they appear to be a bit of a winner.
The other option they just sort of hint at too is potentially some of their predators aren't about in these more urban areas as well. So you sort of birds of prey and otters and other sort of mustelid-like creatures might be less apparent, less abundant, allowing these snakes to do just fine.
That's a good one as well. Cool. All right, Ben. Well, I think that pretty much... Have you got any other business for this week?
I'm thinking I don't think I do, no.
No, we will forgo the species of the bye-week this week because we had our quiz.
It's been replaced by by a quiz.
By a quiz, yeah. I just had one AOB. We had an email from Ben Hershey. So Ben said, "Hey, Ben and Tom, love your podcast. Just started listening a few months ago. Cheers, Ben. I've seriously learned a ton. I'd like to hear your thoughts on Amphibians and the phylogeny, whether you think they should be considered lizards or their own group, and if they are considered lizards, would you consider snakes, lizards as well, based on phylogeny? Thanks." So we've got two questions here. First of all, Amphibians, those weird little legless lizards.
My opinion on them, I'm a fan.
I'm a fan. Yeah, that's my opinion on them. Should they be considered lizards? 100% definitely yes, they are lizards. Their most close relatives are lizards in the family Lacertidae. So that's Lacertids. So that's like wool lizards, stuff like that, which are sort of this like
quintessential lizards, really.
They're quintessential lizards, yeah.
That's what comes to mind when I think lizard, but that might be European bias.
But Amphibians, yes, they are definitely lizards, despite their evolution to a weird state where they're like... Amphibians, they have no legs. Some of them have 2 legs.
Don't they have little front sort of shovel legs, some of the species?
Have they just got 2 front legs? Yeah, 3 of the species have legs, most of them don't. So the mole lizards have legs.
That's what I think of when I think of them, are the mole lizards.
The little pink ones with the weird little arms. Amphibians are strange, but yes, they are 100% definitely lizards. And the second part of your question, Ben, was about snakes. Snakes are also lizards. Snakes, the sort of like family positioning of snakes has been quite controversial in the past, but snakes are definitely technically lizards. They are one clade of lizards, so snakes... yeah, nested within lizards. And they're most closely related to iguanian and anguimorph lizards. So iguania is iguanas and anoles, and anguimorpha is monitor lizards and beaded lizards. So snakes are kind of adjacent to those. Still a bit controversial, and you can read all different things online about snakes, and it might change again. But yes, they are definitely a type of lizards, but they are super special and their own thing, and they're actually better than lizards.
Well, there you go. You've heard it here first. Snakes officially better than lizards, despite being lizards.
It's one of those sort of oxymorons of nature. But yeah, thanks very much for the question and the kind words, Ben. That's it, I think, isn't it, really, for us?
Perfect.
If you want to get in touch with us, you can. If you've got a question or if you want to make a correction, herphighlights@gmail.com. We're on social media. If you want to become a Patreon, you can. Patreon.com/herphighlights. All that remains to be said, thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.